Hello, I'm Hettie Judah, the Curator of Acts of Creation on Art and Motherhood. For the DCA film programme, I've chosen, I guess, what we're calling a Diablo Cody season. And I really wanted to celebrate her as a writer because she brings just tremendous humanity and a proper kind of empathetic female viewpoint onto motherhood in various different ways and from various different directions. And I think it's extraordinary once you start to delve into it how little depiction of real lived motherhood there actually is in cinema. And of course this reflects the tremendous gender imbalance in Hollywood and the fact that there are very few female directors and comparatively few female scriptwriters. And she's a brilliant writer. She's really funny, she's really sassy, her dialogue is just wonderful. But she also writes these really compelling, flawed, brilliant, clever characters. So the trilogy starts with Juno, which was really the film that I think made her name. And Juno is looking at an experience of teenage pregnancy, which again is something that's very rarely depicted sympathetically, and yet of course is a very, a very common phenomenon. And we've got this very compelling heroine who is very bright, she's very funny, but she's not a perfect person, and there are all kinds of really amazing human details in this extremely sympathetic portrayal of a high schooler who gets pregnant. The trilogy then moves into a film called Young Adult, and for me this is really a film that's about that kind of difficult transitional period when you're in your 30s and you still feel very young, and yet lots of the people around you are settling down and they're perhaps having lives that you feel look like the lives your parents had, that they're maybe they're in a suburban home, they've got young children, they're a bit more settled, and there's part of you that still wants to be a teenager and to live that unfettered life, but there's also part of you that's perhaps feeling a little left out, a little excluded, and you're really unsure as to whether you want to be part of a family or you don't. And I think that quite difficult transitional period in a woman's life is very little discussed, and I think it's shown with a considerable degree of complexity in what's quite a kind of dark film. I mean, it's funny, but I found it a really dark and difficult film, and I thought it was quite extraordinary. And Charlize Theron's performance, I think, is really exceptional. And then we move through into Tully, which is looking at the experience of early motherhood. And it's, again, it's got that real darkness to it and this great humour to it. And again, an amazing performance by Charlize Theron. But it looks at that kind of overwhelming quality and slight kind of, this feeling of like really losing it that you get with early motherhood, where you're incredibly sleep deprived. And there are all these extraordinary demands being made on your body to, feed this young baby, but also, you're not having any sleep. You are also potentially having to look after other young children as well. And for me, it kind of captured that deranged sense of the early months of motherhood.